There was once a samurai in feudal Japan who believed that one day he would become great. Not today, not this season, but one day when the conditions aligned, when his spirit felt ready, when the chaos of his circumstances finally settled into something resembling peace. He was not lazy. Understand that clearly. He trained occasionally with genuine intensity when the mood arrived. He read the texts of masters. He spoke with precision about discipline and war. He knew the philosophy of the sword, the way a man knows the layout of a house he has never entered by description alone. His name does not matter. His story does. Because his story is not old. It is not buried in the soil of feudal Japan. It is alive. It is present. It walks through your days with familiar footsteps, wearing your face, speaking in your voice, making your excuses with remarkable sophistication. He wanted mastery. He wanted transformation. And so he waited for time to deliver it. He told himself, "I will begin properly in the spring." The spring came, and he found new reasons. He told himself he was still preparing. He was reading. He was thinking. He was building a foundation. And in his mind, this preparation felt identical to progress. It had the same emotional texture, the same quiet satisfaction. And so the years moved around him the way water moves around a stone, without resistance, without friction, without changing the stone at all. He aged. He did not grow. This is the first great deception of the undisciplined mind, that time itself is a force of transformation, that simply surviving another year means you have moved forward, that the accumulation of days is somehow equivalent to the accumulation of wisdom or strength or character. It is not. Time is neutral. Time does not care what you do with it. It will pass regardless, and it will pass at the same rate for the man who builds himself and for the man who only dreams of building. The samurai understood this as philosophy. He failed to understand it as practice. This is the gap that destroys most men. Not ignorance, not lack of intelligence, not lack of desire. A gap between intellectual understanding and embodied action, between knowing and doing, between the version of yourself you can describe and the version you are actually becoming through daily repetition. He knew what discipline was. He had simply never submitted to it. Now consider Miyamoto Musashi, not the legend, the man. Musashi was not born exceptional. He was born volatile, fatherless in practice, raised in uncertainty, fighting his first duel at 13 years old. He did not begin with calm. He did not begin with perfect conditions. He began and he kept beginning, day after day, across 60 duels, across decades of deliberate practice, across the kind of structured repetition that most men cannot sustain for 60 days, let alone 60 years. By the time he wrote the Book of 5 Rings, he was living in a cave, not because he had failed, because he had simplified. He had stripped his existence down to the essential, to thought, to practice, to craft. He wrote with the same sword hand that had ended the lives of skilled men. He wrote without sentimentality. He wrote without comfort. He wrote, "Do nothing that is of no use." 5 words. A complete philosophy of structure. Musashi did not become Musashi because time passed. He became Musashi because he built a structure, a daily architecture of action, and then he submitted to it regardless of how he felt, regardless of whether inspiration arrived, regardless of whether the conditions were ideal. He trained in rain. He trained in grief. He trained when his body was bruised and his spirit was uncertain. He trained because training was not conditional. It was the structure of his days. This is the distinction that separates transformation from stagnation. Not talent, not fate, structure. Return now to the samurai who waited. He was not suffering in any obvious way. That is part of what made his condition so dangerous. He was comfortable. And comfort, sustained over time, is a slow erasure. It does not announce itself as failure. It feels like patience. it masquerades as wisdom. It whispers, "You are not ready yet, but soon." And soon never arrives, because soon is not a point in time. It is a mechanism of avoidance. The psychological term for this is ego protection. When we delay action, we protect the image we hold of ourselves. As long as you have not truly tried, as long as you remain in the preparation phase, you cannot fail. And if you cannot fail, the ego remains intact. You can still say, "I am a man who will become great, not a man who tried and did not." The unlived potential feels safer than the tested reality. But this safety is a cage. The man who protects his ego from failure also protects it from growth. These cannot be separated. You cannot selectively expose yourself to success while shielding yourself from the friction that produces it. Friction is the mechanism. Resistance is the tool. The discomfort you avoid is precisely the forge in which character is made. The samurai knew this too, philosophically, abstractly. He had read it in texts. He could recite it to others with quiet authority. And yet he continued to avoid the daily practice that would have made the knowledge real in his body, in his habits, in the structure of his identity. Because knowing is comfortable. Doing is not. There is a particular illusion that afflicts intelligent people most severely. The illusion that understanding something is equivalent to embodying it. That reading about a warrior's discipline is a form of discipline. That studying the philosophy of action is a form of action. It is not. It is its shadow. Shadows do not build anything. The trap is elegant because it feels like progress. The man who reads about running feels momentarily similar to the man who runs. The man who studies the biographies of generals feels momentarily adjacent to strategic thinking. This feeling is not entirely false. Understanding matters. But understanding without structure, without daily embodied repetition, dissolves. It returns to abstraction. And abstraction does not change you. Only practice changes you. Only structure changes you. Only the accumulation of small repeated actions, performed without waiting for inspiration, without requiring the perfect emotional state, without negotiating with your own resistance. Only this changes you. Motivation is not the cause of action. This is one of the deepest misunderstandings in modern thinking about human behavior. We have inverted the sequence. We wait for motivation as if it were weather, as if it arrives from outside, as if we must simply be positioned correctly to receive it. But motivation does not precede action. Motivation follows it. You do not feel ready and then begin. You begin, and readiness follows. You do not feel disciplined and then train. You train, and discipline follows. You do not feel like a warrior and then live like one. You live like a warrior, and slowly, across months and years of structure, that is what you become. The sequence matters completely. Reverse it, and you will wait forever. Keep it correct, and transformation becomes almost inevitable, not because you are exceptional, but because the structure does the work. You do not need to be exceptional. You need to be consistent. These are not the same thing. The samurai's flaw was not weakness. It was misunderstanding. He believed that transformation was an event, something that would arrive suddenly, announced, unmistakable. A moment of clarity, a season of readiness. A version of himself that finally felt prepared enough to begin in earnest. He believed that he was accumulating something by waiting. He was not. He was only accumulating time, and time without structure leaves nothing behind. Strength does not mean feeling strong before you act. Strength means acting when you do not feel strong. Discipline does not mean never struggling. Discipline means maintaining your structure, even when the struggle is real. The warrior is not the man who never doubts. The warrior is the man whose doubts do not determine his actions. He feels the resistance. He feels the fatigue. He feels the pull toward comfort and delay, and he trains anyway. Not because he is emotionally invulnerable, because his structure is stronger than his mood. This is what Musashi understood. This is what Marcus Aurelius practiced in the cold pre-dawn hours before governing an empire, rising before comfort demanded it, submitting to the structure of virtue before the day could negotiate him out of it. He wrote to himself, not for publication, not for legacy, but as daily instruction, as structural reinforcement. Confine yourself to the present, not inspiration, instruction, not feeling, architecture. Now consider what is lost in waiting. Not dramatically, quietly. The man who waits 1 year loses more than a year. He loses the momentum that the first year would have created, which would have carried him into the second, which would have compounded into the third. He loses the identity shifts that occur through practice, the small incremental revisions to how he sees himself, which only come from evidence of sustained action. He loses the confidence that is not given but earned, not through affirmation, but through the accumulated proof of showing up. You cannot give a man this confidence. He cannot receive it as a gift. It must be built, action by action, structure by structure, day by day. And every day of waiting is not neutral. It is a day of evidence in the opposite direction. A day that tells you, at the level below conscious thought, you are the kind of man who waits. Identity is not what you declare. Identity is what your daily actions confirm. Do not wait for the version of yourself you want to become. Build toward him, deliberately, structurally, one repeated action at a time, without requiring inspiration to arrive first. The samurai eventually grew old. He was not a bad man. He was a sincere man. He genuinely wanted the life he imagined. But wanting and building are separated by the only thing that actually matters: structured, repeated action, performed whether or not the emotions cooperate. He had the philosophy. He lacked the architecture. This is the final truth. Time is not your ally or your enemy. It is simply the medium through which structure operates. Build the structure, and time works for you, compounding your actions into identity. Ignore the structure, and time works against you, compounding your delays into a life unlived. You are not transformed by what you intend. You are not transformed by what you understand. You are not transformed by what you believe about yourself in moments of quiet reflection. You are transformed by what you do, every day, without exception, without waiting. Build the structure, submit to it, return to it when you fail, and then return again. The man who shows up every day without inspiration becomes, in time, a man who does not need it.